Hi, I'm Sam from Responsible Futures and welcome to Sustain Talks. Today I'm joined by Shane Herath, CEO and founder of Eco-Friendly Web Alliance. Shane has joined me on the podcast before when we were talking about sustainable innovation in technology and has the second most viewed Sustain Talks. But this time we're here to talk about the carbon footprint of websites and digital infrastructure. Welcome back, Shane. It's so good to have you back again. Really good to see you. How are you?
Great to be back, Sam. Totally enjoyed our last session as well. And I met you at Reset Connect just a few days ago. So yeah, good to be back. Absolutely.
Yeah. And good to have met you in person. It seems strange, we've been speaking for such a long time virtually. But it's great to meet in person. But things have changed since the last podcast we did. You've now launched and found Eco-Friendly Web Alliance. Can you please tell us more about that?
We basically started our journey around 2018, and with that sustainable innovation tech ecosystem, the manifesto that we had going, as well as quite a bit of a following with regards to some of the tech companies coming forward, making pledges in terms of looking at their approach to design, development, and running of applications with energy efficiency and carbon efficiency in mind. Just quite an organic journey when we started looking at websites in particular. And looking at ways in which how we can get that message across, and that ended up being the Eco-Friendly Web Alliance, which we founded last year. It's been an accelerating journey because we got quite a lot of unexpected support as well from all quarters. We've put together a formidable scientific advisory board as well, which I'm really proud of. That's where we draw most of our strength from in terms of that setting of that initial standard, as well as review and progression of it. Since then, it's been recognized really well. We've had a lot of support, as well as it's been snowballing as of late as well, with more and more people taking that on board. It ended up being the world's first eco standard for websites and digital platforms and infrastructure, being part of that. The whole mission, Sam, is to accelerate the delivery of a sustainable digital economy, which is much needed, looking at the high energy consumption and carbon emissions of the internet. We felt that it's a very important mission.
Yeah. So what does the Web Alliance actually do? Do you go in and have a look at somebody's website and digital infrastructure? How do you go about making it eco-friendly?
So the idea and the aim is to prevent 500,000 tons of CO2 being added to the atmosphere by getting websites across the world to be a bit more energy efficient, carbon efficient. So as a collective, as the scientific advisory board, we looked at, we've analyzed thousands and thousands of sites. And average website's about 2 grams of CO2 per page view. So we realized if we can make a 50% sort of an improvement from there, if we kind of cut it down, by half to getting it to be under 1 gram of CO2 per page view, then that's a good starting point. So it's creating that pathway, as well as it's a good first step to reducing your digital emissions. As you and I both know, digital emissions are, it's rest of the things that we basically do, some of the other digital technologies, the infrastructure we use, some of the systems, platforms, so it's, and our sort of digital behavior also sort of contributory factor to that. So looking at your website where we can sort of have a direct say in terms of keeping it quite low in terms of page size, can pay dividends in terms of reducing that data transfer, thereby the energy consumption, as well as the emissions, because vast majority of the world's energy is coming from fossil fuels. So we're very fossil fuel reliant in terms of our energy. So it's what you and I can do to make a difference. And as website owners, businesses can take that first step and lead the way in that transition.
So just to understand it a bit more, because some websites are going to be way more carbon intensive than others, what's the difference between, is it more pages, more pictures? How can you tell the difference in the emissions of one website to one that doesn't have very high ones?
It's a difficult one. I mean, to the naked eye, we don't see the difference, right? We just see the images on a web page, the content, text, etc. So it boils down to the page size. Sometimes we've come across sites where they don't look any different to any other site that's performing well, but then you realize maybe the image content is high. In some cases, we found out that it's about what you put on the sites. Sometimes we don't realize and end up putting raw images in there, or someone else may have sort of done that, and the realization, if we were to compress it and put it back, that could sort of really reduce that data transfer, because the packet size gets lower in terms of that data transfer that happens when a page is loaded on an end user device. So, and keeping some of the elements, quite optimized and organized, really. So reviewing your site in terms of what have I put that, what's the purpose of these things? Does it sort of really reflect what the brand wants to basically portray? And does it really sort of add value to the visitor, for example? So looking at ways in which you can keep that overall page size low, that's the whole idea. And so that's always a good starting point, and and taking it from there. Some of the websites we've come across are really heavy, but vast majority of the websites, the average is about 2 grams per page width, but if you can make that sort of 50% improvement from there to getting it to be under 1 gram, we will end up saving billions and billions of tons of CO2 across the globe. But we're not basically telling people you need to go through this accreditation process, but we are sort of driving a community-led movement as well in that regard. So you could be a cafe owner maybe in Peru, and you happen to have a little bit of a digital presence, you have a website. How can we help that person as well to kind of apply these changes and contribute to that transition? So we've made the site available in quite a few different languages. We're trying to get some of our open source tooling to be as inclusive as possible. So there's a lot of work to be done in that regard. So.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what size company you are or what size or what industry you're in, does it? It's really something that everyone can think about. And I suppose it's one of those things, we talk about the energy in our buildings, we talk about our own carbon footprint and the food we eat. And it's one of those things that I guess people have not really thought about, the digital infrastructure, your digital footprint. We leave everything on standby all the time. We've become used to it, and it's only things like our energy bills that are starting to drive that down. But when you're looking at a company's digital infrastructure, I guess there's things that people can do themselves, but it really takes a professional like yourself to be able to understand data centers and where that footprint is, right?
It's a lot of important questions to be asked here. I mean, it's one of the things, or the preconceptions we sort of preconceived, or I would say, like, we're kind of conditioned to think that this, because we don't see any kind of visible emissions when it comes to digital side of things. We don't see sort of smoke coming out of keyboards, or we got that sort of notion of, okay, data centers, it's the cloud and the cloud storage, but cloud is not quite cloud, is it? It's sort of these data centers sort of hidden away from sort of public view, like warehouses, etc. So this whole issue is sort of gone under the radar in that regard, and when you think about where the energy is coming from, and then you realize that it's really the energy consumption is really high as well. You're looking at about 10% of the world's energy been consumed by the internet, and it's under that sort of broad sort of definition of basically the machines, data centers, machines. By machines, I mean like end user devices, so smartphones, tabs, laptops, etc., and data centers, transmission networks, so all that sort of put together. I don't know whether I answered your question right, but I was just.
You did, and I think that there's lots of different areas where the digital infrastructure and carbon footprint of the internet, it seems to be growing. We seem to be moving more to the internet, to virtual, to it is growing, right? It's getting worse, not better.
Absolutely. So as things stand, it's nearly 4% in terms of internet's contribution to global carbon emissions. Put that into context, aviation's about 3%. So we've gone past aviation quite comfortably. The other thing to keep in mind is internet consumes about 10% of the world's energy, and 70 to 80%, if you were to look at the global energy mix, is coming from fossil fuels. So internet's carbon emissions are sort of set to double in the next few years. You're probably looking at about 3 to 4 years if the current kind of trend continues, and a lot of us are sort of trying to kind of change that. But with new technologies, if you would even look at like from energy consumption perspective, internet's energy consumption, that's sort of set to double in about 8 years' time. So we might end up consuming 20% of the world's energy. That's 1/5 of the world's energy, when there's already an energy crisis, and energy is something that is a huge concern for the world. So with new technologies, this problem's getting even more sort of exacerbated. Which require enormous resources, from storage to hardware, etc. So
exactly,
it is a problem.
And things like NFTs and Meta, we're being driven even further into the internet, and it is just going to grow and grow. So we really need to take responsibility ourselves now, and it's going to become a larger part of organizations digital of their overall footprint, actually. Tell me a bit more about how things have been going since the launch of Eco-Friendly Web Alliance. You've worked with some really great organizations, I see, recently.
Things have progressed really well, and we've received quite a lot of recognition, as well as more and more organizations want to apply that change, take that first step to reducing their digital emissions, starting their journey with their websites, getting it to be eco-friendly, in some cases climate positive as well, when they make a pledge to host their websites using green energy. So basically using a hosting provider that runs their services using a data center that runs on renewable energy. As well as taking responsibility for their annual carbon emissions by multitude of ways, insetting, offsetting, through credible sort of reforestation, which you and I often sort of talk about. And one has to be very careful with regards to the greenwashing side of things, and making sure that they have got direct oversight or visibility to the change that they claim to be making, or the impact. So it's growing rapidly as we speak, with the likes of sort of London and Partners, the official agency in terms of promoting London as a destination, as well as a growth hub, supported by the London Mayor, the Ecology Centre, Norton Park, and many others sort of coming on board, and sustainable sort of fashion brands. And so it's very diverse in terms of the different types of organizations. Because like you said, website is a website. It doesn't matter which sector you're in, and this is a way in which you can make an impact. And every single website has that power to make a difference. So how can you sort of go about looking at your website, making those sort of 2-3 changes and getting it to be a bit more energy efficient and carbon efficient, and playing your part in that, and then looking at your rest of sort of digital basically decision making, if you like, in terms of your culture and other systems and the rest of it. So it's a good starting point. One thing I want to sort of touch on is you mentioned NFTs and Meta, and they're incredible kind of basically tech innovations. But my question is how are we going to find energy to power all these things? So I firmly believe that you have to have right sort of checks and balances before you sort of take on a new technology, let's say at an organizational level or at a personal level. So NFTs and blockchain, I mean, if you would look at sort of fundamental technology, that's very good. But it's just, what do you use those technologies for? For example, if you were to go to look at blockchain or that multiple ledger sort of situation, if you were to look at like solving some of the issues around agriculture, food traceability, alleviating problems around food poverty and things like that, so you can put it to good use. But if you were to put it to, for example, cryptocurrency mining and some of the other aspects, and I know quite a lot of these organizations have sort of cleaned up their act in terms of sort of looking at sort of renewable energy sources, etc., in terms of the energy for these technologies. But again, I ask the question: Is it still a sort of a good use of that energy when there's an energy crisis? Can we sort of put it to something else? Yeah, is my question. Meta, it's been said, metaverse requires about 1,000 times more computational power. So you can imagine the exponential growth that's required in terms of producing these hardware. We might sort of push some of these hardware towards an upgrade, which sort of creates the problem around, again, like recycling and the rest of sort of circular economy that needs to sort of evolve in that, as well as the growth that's required in terms of storage, etc. So again, it's that can create a few more problems as well. As exciting as the technology that is, when there is an energy crisis, is it still like a good use of energy? So how do we sort of swiftly move towards a responsible consumption of some of these technologies? How can we take a bit more responsibility? It doesn't mean let's not use these technologies. It means like, how can we apply some of those concepts in a digital concept, in a digital sort of context, I should add, applying that sort of sustainable development goals 12 in terms of our digital choices and digital behavior, as much as possible.
I totally agree with you, and I believe that the overconsumption of everything can, if it's the climate crisis is only going to get worse, and we're moving at a speed that we need to slow it down and not we're coming up with these new things that are only going to use it even more, not reduce it, and we're supposed to be reducing. But what are your future plans for Eco-Friendly Web Alliance? What's happening over the next 6 months?
So we are going global at the moment, Sam, and we've identified various partners across the globe as well, in the Asia Pacific to South Americas, and some of the other regions in the world, and we are developing quite a bit of a strong community around that as well, getting some of these tools to be available in all different languages, and the plan is to drive that community movement or the community-led movement a lot more, as well as help as many organizations as possible in terms of that transition towards that lot more sort of carbon efficient and energy efficient websites, and then also sort of help them with regards to their digital platforms as well. So trying to sort of encourage as many businesses out there to get their website looked at and checked. We do a free audit for their websites, and there's no obligation. They can get their website looked at. We give them a proper audit in that regard. And it's up to them to apply those changes, and there's no obligation for them to go for the accreditation. So using that as a sort of a starting point and a conversation starter, and get as many people as possible to go on that journey directly through accreditations in terms of us sort of certifying these websites across the globe, as well as supporting the community to drive that change as well, because we've set ourselves quite a lofty goal of initially preventing 500,000 tons of CO2 being added to the atmosphere. So we can do with all the help we can get, Sam.
Honestly, I think it's going to be possible for you. I really do. You're a great person. You're doing a great job. And I love watching your journey and seeing how you've evolved over the last year. And I'm sure that this podcast is going to be hugely popular again. You have to try and beat your last one. But thank you, Shane. Thanks for explaining more about Eco-Friendly Web Alliance. I think it's a great organisation, and we're delighted to partner with you as well, and to help support you and drive you forward, because it is such an important mission. Thanks for your time. It's good to speak to you as always, and yeah, you have a good day.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thanks for the opportunity, and good speaking with you again. And yeah, have a good day and speak soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one more thing. Where can people, if they want to go and get their website, they go to what's your website?
If they go to ecofriendlyweb.org and click on Get Your Free Audit, and our team will jump on that, and we would complete those audits.
Good. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Sam. Great speaking with you. Take care. Speak soon.